What happens when a girl who cannot see the world with her eyes teaches a man who refuses to see the world with his heart? Sometimes, blindness isn't about the eyes, it's about the soul. The city roared with life, its skyline glittering under the fading sunset. But Ethan Carter had no time for beauty. He was the kind of man who walked past paintings without noticing the colors, who heard music without listening to the melody, who met people without remembering their names. For him, life was nothing but a ladder of deals, contracts, and profits. He was known as the Heartless businessman, a man who crushed competition and treated emotions as weaknesses. On the other side of the city, in a small corner cafe where the smell of fresh bread filled the air, lived a very different world. Claire, a young woman in her early 20s, sat by the window every evening, listening to the hum of life outside. Her long brown hair fell over her shoulders, and her unseeing eyes always looked calm. Claire was blind since childhood, but her spirit was brighter than any star. She worked part-time at the cafe, serving customers with a smile so warm that people often forgot she could not see them. Their worlds should never have crossed, but fate had other plans. It happened one rainy evening. Ethan's car broke down near the cafe, and with a storm raging outside, he stepped in, irritated, his expensive suit already damp. He hated small, crowded places, but he needed shelter. Inside, he noticed the staff rushing around except for one girl who moved slower, carefully, almost gracefully. She carried a tray of coffee to a table, her hand trembling slightly as she placed the cups down. Ethan frowned. He was about to complain about how unprofessional she seemed when he noticed something. Her eyes. They were open, yet distant, unfocused. She couldn't see. For some reason, instead of turning away, he kept watching her. And that was the beginning. Sometimes the people we think are the weakest end up holding the strength we never knew we needed. Ethan sat at a corner table, waiting impatiently for his driver to send another car. His phone kept buzzing with emails, deals, and reminders, but for once, his attention was elsewhere. The blind girl, Claire, moved carefully across the cafe. Listening to the sound of cups clinking and chairs scraping against the floor, she didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply moved with a quiet confidence, as though she trusted the world to make space for her. When she reached his table, she smiled. "Would you like something warm? Maybe coffee? You look like you've had a long day." Her voice was soft, melodic, carrying warmth that unsettled Ethan. He wasn't used to people speaking to him kindly without wanting something in return. For a moment, he almost said no, but something in her tone made him pause. "Yeah. Coffee," he muttered finally. She nodded, scribbled on her notepad, and walked back. Ethan couldn't help but notice how other customers smiled at her, how a little boy waved at her, even though she couldn't see him. It was as if her presence lit up the entire room. When she brought his coffee, her hand brushed the edge of the table, steadying the cup before placing it down. "Careful," she said gently, as if she were the one protecting him. "It's hot," Ethan blinked. No one ever warned him about little things like that. People around him were always too afraid to speak unless it was business. Yet here she was, blind, fragile looking, but treating him like a person instead of a title. He took a sip. The coffee was strong, bitter, perfect. But it wasn't the taste that lingered, it was her words. When his driver finally arrived, Ethan left a large bill on the table, not even thinking about the amount. Claire picked it up, ran her fingers across it, and shook her head. "It's too much." "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't take it." Ethan froze. Nobody refused his money. Nobody. But she did. And for the first time in years, he left a place not thinking about profits, but about a girl who couldn't see him, yet had managed to look right through him. When someone refuses what the world always craves from you, it unsettles everything you thought you knew about life. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. His penthouse, with its glass walls overlooking the glittering city, felt emptier than ever. He walked from one end of the room to the other, his mind circling around a single image, the blind waitress refusing his money with a calm smile. He was Ethan Cole, the ruthless businessman who built an empire from ashes. People called him cold, heartless, untouchable. But Claire, she had spoken to him like he was just a man. Not a billionaire, not a tycoon, not a name on magazine covers. It's just a man. The next evening, against his own logic, Ethan found himself walking back into that cafe. He told himself it was coincidence that he needed to speak with a client nearby. But deep down he knew. He was drawn there by something he couldn't name. Claire was there, humming softly as she cleaned tables. She didn't see him come in, but she felt it. Turning toward him, she smiled. "Back again?" Ethan was startled. "How did you know it was me?" She chuckled. "I remember voices. You sounded tired yesterday. Today it sounds curious." Her words caught him off guard. Nobody ever described him like that. Tired? Curious? Most people described him as powerful, intimidating, even dangerous. Yet this girl saw something different, something he didn't show anyone. They talked. For the first time in years, Ethan spoke without rehearsed answers. Claire asked simple questions. Did he enjoy books? Music? What was his favorite childhood memory? Nobody asked him such things anymore, and he almost forgot how to answer. When he left that night, she said something that clung to his heart like a quiet echo. The world is noisy, Ethan. Don't let it make you deaf to yourself. Back in his car, Ethan leaned back, staring at the city lights. He had everything people dreamed of: wealth, power, influence. Yet a blind girl in a small cafe had given him something he didn't even realize he was starving for: the truth. And he knew he would return again, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to. Sometimes, the people who can't see the world end up seeing our hearts the clearest. The third time Ethan visited the cafe, Claire wasn't at the counter. For a man who prided himself on patience in boardrooms, the wait felt unbearable. He sat in the corner, restless, till she appeared carrying a tray with the ease of someone who had learned to dance with life instead of fighting it. "You came back," she said, sensing him immediately. "Should I not have?" Ethan asked, almost offensively. Claire smiled softly. "That depends. Are you here for the coffee, or for the silence you don't get anywhere else?" Her words pierced him. Silence. Yes, that was what drew him back. With her, the noise of shareholders, competitors, and endless deals disappeared. She didn't care who he was in the world's eyes, only who he was in front of her. Over time, their conversations deepened. Claire told him stories of how she lost her sight as a child, how the darkness forced her to find light in other ways. She spoke of the warmth in people's voices, the honesty in their pauses, the emotions hidden in silences. Ethan found himself listening, not to respond, not to dominate, but simply to feel. One evening, as rain pattered against the cafe windows, Ethan asked, "Claire, don't you ever wish you could see again?" She turned her blind eyes toward him. "Sometimes, but then I realize, if I could see, maybe I would be distracted by appearances. This way I see deeper, see people for who they are, not what they show. The simplicity of her truth shook him. All his life, Ethan had been judged by his money, his suits, his empire. Love doesn't always come crashing in it, sometimes arrives quietly, until one day you realize it's the only thing holding you together. Ethan's world began to shift. The office boardrooms, once his battlefield, now felt strangely hollow. He found himself leaving meetings earlier, ignoring calls that once dictated his life, just so he could sit in Claire's cafe and listen to her talk. Claire noticed too. "You've changed," she said one evening, her head tilted in that intuitive way she had. "Is that a bad thing?" Ethan asked, unsure. "It's not bad," she replied softly. "It's human. You sound lighter when you laugh. You breathe differently now. Like someone who's finally living instead of just surviving." Those words cut deep. For years, Ethan had lived like a machine, driven by ambition, fueled by emptiness. But now her presence filled the void he never admitted he had. Then came the night that tested them both. Ethan's rival in business, Marcus, discovered his frequent visits to the cafe. Marcus spread rumors that the mighty Ethan Cole had fallen for a blind waitress, that he was losing his edge because of her. The whispers spread quickly through boardrooms and tabloids. When Ethan stormed into the cafe, Claire immediately sensed the storm in his steps. "What's wrong?" she asked. "They're talking about you," Ethan snapped. "About us, about me being weak, because I care about you." His fists clenched at his side, the rage boiling over. But Claire didn't flinch. Instead, she stood up and faced him with quiet strength. "And do you believe them? That caring is weakness?" Ethan froze. Her voice wasn't accusing, it was steady, like an anchor. He sank into a chair, covering his face with his hands. "I don't know anymore. I spent my life believing emotions are dangerous. But with you, I don't want to go back to that empty world." Claire reached across the table, her hand brushing against his, finding its way to hold him. "Then don't," she whispered. "Let them talk. Let the world laugh. They don't live your life, you do." For the first time, Ethan let his guard down completely. In her touch, he felt something he hadn't known he needed: home. And in that moment, Ethan realized the truth. Claire hadn't just taught him how to love. She had taught him how to live. Some love stories aren't about finding someone new, about rediscovering the heart you thought you'd lost forever. Weeks passed and the world outside kept whispering. Newspapers still printed headlines mocking Ethan's weakness. Investors doubted him, and Marcus did everything to paint him as a fool, blinded by sentiment. But Ethan didn't care anymore. The man who once lived for reputation now lived for something far greater: Claire. One evening, he invited her to his penthouse. The space, usually cold and lifeless, now glowed with warmth. Soft lights replaced the harsh brightness, and music played faintly in the background. For the first time, the house felt like a home. Claire traced her hands along the furniture, smiling. "It's beautiful, but lonely," she whispered. Ethan walked closer.
"Not anymore," he said.
"Not since you came into my life." Her cheeks warmed, but before she could respond, he gently took her hands and guided her toward the balcony. The city stretched out before them, shimmering with thousands of lights. Claire couldn't see them, but she could feel the night air, hear the hum of life, and sensed the awe in Ethan's silence. "Claire," Ethan began, his voice trembling slightly, "I've spent years building walls so no one could hurt me. And yet you broke through without even trying. You saw me the man, not the businessman. It's a broken human, not the powerful name." Her eyes turned toward him, full of quiet strength. "And what do you see now, Ethan?" He swallowed hard. "I see the woman who taught me what love really is. I see the one person who makes me want to be better. Not for the world, but for her." He dropped to one knee, holding her hand tightly. "I don't care what anyone says. I don't care about wealth, power, or reputation. Claire, will you let me spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can love you the way you deserve?" Tears welled in Claire's eyes. She bent down, cupping his face with her hands. "Ethan, I was never looking for wealth, or power, or a savior. I only ever wanted someone who could truly see me, and you did. Even when the world turned against us, you chose me. So yes, Ethan, I will." The city below roared with noise, but for them, the world went silent. It was just two souls, once broken, now whole. From that night forward, Ethan wasn't the heartless businessman anymore. He was the man who learned to love because of a blind girl who saw more clearly than anyone else ever could. And Claire. She was no longer just a girl defined by her blindness. She was his compass, his strength, his forever.